Typically, when it comes to guns and organizations that revolve around the laws and legal battles when it comes to guns fall into two camps. There are the Moms Demand, aka the gun grabbers, and then there are the gun rights organizations, some of them that I recommend supporting: Gun Owners of America, Firearms Policy Coalition, CRPA if you're in the state of California, or Second Amendment Foundation. Those are kind of my four. They kind of fall into two categories: the gun grabbers, the gun rights advocates. You wouldn't expect someone in the gun rights advocate group to be supporting a self-regulation or self-imposed laws that don't actually exist, and that you would expect them to support the creators and sellers of firearms products to help support the Second Amendment. Because you can be pro-gun without being pro-2A. And we're going to kind of hit the FUD bingo when it comes to this interview from John Crump and Kim Stolfer, the president of Firearm Owners Against Crime in Pennsylvania. I'm going to play a little clip of this section of the interview, and then I'm going to respond to it. I did my best to cut these sections down into more palatable sections, highlighting some of the key points that I wanted to talk about. If you want to hear them in their full context, you can watch the interview down below. I will have a link to that to John Crump's website. I've done my best to keep it in the context that it was given, but keep in mind, if you want the full thing, go ahead and watch the 25-minute interview. We're going to cut it down and kind of give my opinion and react.
But my quote would be, we support the rights of Eagle Arms to determine who sells what products at their shows. Flat out. It's a private property right. And anything else beyond that, as far as a legislative purpose, has specifically been denied by us in our news release.
Right. You had a run-in with the people at JSD Supply at a recent gun show. Did you make a comment that they should be ashamed of themselves for selling 80% kits?
Do I think they should be ashamed of themselves? Could I have said that? Sure, I could have said that.
Yeah.
But they couldn't care less about the consequences. Yes.
Okay. Do you believe that 80% lowers should be banned?
Oh, hell no. And I've made it clear to them that we do not support that. But we also don't support a cash and carry operation putting these guns on the street through nefarious means.
He brings up a common tactic that's used when it comes to people self-regulating or choosing to not sell or sell something that could legally be sold in that state, but choosing not to just because it's their right. Yes, it is that company's right to not sell something or not allow something to be sold on their own private property. I agree with that. However, I can still think you are a cunt if you choose to self-regulate and not allow certain things, and that's my opinion of the fact. I'm not saying that you cannot choose not to. I'm saying that you choosing not to makes me not like you, and that's very normal. Then he goes on to badmouth JSD Supply, because we know that JSD Supply's employees were, I don't want to say verbally assaulted, but yelled at and told that they are bad people and that they're claiming that they have no morals, saying that they don't care about where these guns end up. Well, here's the thing. You could take that same argument and put it in the anti-gunner side, and then they make those same arguments to anyone that's ever sold a gun. I worked in a gun store for several years. Am I responsible for every single firearm that left that store? How do I choose who to sell and who not to, even if they can pass a background check? How do I say, oh, you look a little bit sketchy for whatever XYZ reason? Do I choose it based off race, age, gender, sexual orientation, political affiliation? How do I choose? How do I know? How am I to responsibly deny someone's right to keep and bear arms? How do I know those things? There is no way to stop it. You cannot self-regulate in this way.
I'm trying to understand your opinion on it. So basically, you don't think it should be banned, but you think that there should be some type of background checks on it, or?
No, I think people should be able to buy them, just not in a cash and carry situation where they're buying 50 and 100 of them, where they're committing crimes and are turning up in homicides. My belief, and of law enforcement and even the gun dealers that were at the show, is these people are illegitimate. They're harming normal commerce, and they're doing this for their own particular financial reasons or whatever. But I can tell you, as far as I'm concerned, they have no conscience and no soul, because they know the people buying them are going to use them and turn them into crime. And then these guns are completely untrackable. They can't use them for legitimate law enforcement purposes.
This man, who is the leader of a gun rights organization, believes that you should not be able to buy parts which are not firearms. You should not be able to buy them in a cash and carry setting. He believes that there should be some sort of record of purchase, but somehow he also believes that there should be no state registration. How can you say that you feel that people should be able to buy these, but not in a cash and carry setting, and you don't want them to be able to be bought cash in an untraceable manner, but also saying that you don't believe in a universal registration and background check system? He's very much contradicting himself and still going back to the fact that he thinks these people have no soul for simply wanting to supply people with the parts to build a firearm.
I believe that they should be sold through legitimate purposes and not with cash in areas where it's known criminals buying them.
If someone goes in there and they buy one with cash, would you be cool with that?
I wouldn't care about that.
How about if somebody goes into a gun show and buys one with cash?
Well, it's determined by where is the person buying them in cash and why are they using cash? Why can't they do a credit card? Why can't they do a check? See, there's no established record of ownership.
Okay, so, all right. So you want established record of ownership.
We want to recognize the pathways to crime and establish a self-regulating posture on the part of the community.
So a self-regulating registry.
Not registry, no.
It makes total sense, right? You should be able to buy them through legal purposes, but also not through legal purposes, and that there should be a registration scheme that we self-impose on ourselves, but that there shouldn't be a state registration scheme, because if we don't have our self-imposed registration scheme and our self-imposed record of sales, how will the government be able to enforce laws upon us? It makes total sense, right? Clearly, this guy is talking himself in a circle of saying, we don't support government registration of these firearms, but there should be a registration and record of sale. I don't know. It doesn't really make sense to me. What do you think about it? Let me know down below.
In certain areas, you said you would be against them being sold. Are you talking about like in Philadelphia, inner city areas and stuff like that?
In a cash and carry situation, I think that the private seller should not use that.
Okay, but you said in certain areas. Are you talking about high crime areas?
Yes, correct. Okay.
So also,
let me ask you a
but
question.
there are also minority areas.
That's correct.
So do you think that okay, so minority areas? Wow.
No, high crime areas, not minority areas, because
you just.
I don't even know if I need to say it. All gun control is racist. I guess I'll go ahead. Yeah, I said it. I loved listening to this part because it just goes to show that every time there's been bipartisan support for gun control, it's always been because people of color made some white people a little bit too uncomfortable. It's the reason why we can't open carry in the state of California. The Black Panthers made some white people a little bit too uncomfortable about the fact that they were taking their own self-protection into their own hands. But I loved listening to this when John was just clearly, he was thrown back. Listening to this, understanding John's cadence and talking, and understand when people are over the phone, sometimes there's delays, but I listened to that and you hear subtly, it's probably going to be hard to hear after I re-upload it to the YouTubes, but you hear John just kind of stop for a second and say, wow, softly to himself, because he asked the question, and I truly do not think that he was expecting the answer that he received. If you want to listen to it in its entirety to get the full context of that clip, I encourage you to go listen to the whole thing down below, but I can assure you that the entire context does not help. The entire context is just as bad when you hear the whole thing. Drop a like on this if you appreciate this content and you liked what you're seeing here so far. We got more to go. Let's get into it.
I was at the show. I watched it. I talked to dozens of the vendors at the show. Every single one of them supported this. They saw the people coming in. They saw how it hurt them and their sales and their customers. But the fact of the matter is that not one of them thought that was a bad idea. The fact is that these criminals are getting people who are good with their hands in tools, and they're creating a pseudo assembly line and finishing these guns quickly.
Breaking news. This might come as a shock to you, but old fuds at a gun show don't like new things. Old fuds at a gun show support the Second Amendment, but old fuds at a gun show don't like ghost guns and see that this is a reasonable compromise to make. Here's the thing. People have been getting their hands on illegal firearms for a long time, and they're never going to stop regardless of what you do. We've reached a point in time where with the ease of 3D printing, someone can make a full auto or semi-auto 9mm rifle or pistol without any parts that can't be bought at a hardware store. Go ahead and Google the FGC9 if you're interested in. If you want more information about 3D printed firearms, controlpew.com is an excellent resource.
I believe very strongly in the right to bear arms. There's no one more pro-gun than I am. No one that's done more for the Second Amendment community in Pennsylvania than me. I'd like to add one thing for you. You have to understand where I'm coming from. I'm a Marine. I was in Vietnam. I've seen death and destruction to the order that I never want to see it again. I believe in the sanctity of life, and I believe in self-policing and responsibility. And for any gun owner to say, we have to make sure no one stops the sale of these things, no matter who it is, that it's a slippery slope. How are you going to argue when a 15-year-old with a 9mm hole in her head and a polymer gun's at her feet, how are you going to argue against legislation that bans them? I said, you can expect me to do that?
Now, if you're playing FUD bingo at home, I guarantee you all have a straight down the middle. We had the I was in the military, I support the Second Amendment, but, and the think of the children, all in one. He really did check off all of the FUD cards in this. He asked at the end of that, how do you expect him to argue that? Well, here's how I expect you to argue it. Because we've been making those same exact arguments for why we should be able to have, or why we feel that they shouldn't be allowed to take away our assault weapons, why we should have constitutional carry, why we should have no background checks, no registration. Every time we've ever, as a gun community, made an argument, we've had to combat the for the children arguments. So I'm going to go ahead and do it for you right here, Kimmy, because you're having a hard time apparently, and maybe you should step down if you can't handle this kind of responsibility. Here is one argument that we can make against these bans. From 1994 to 2004, we had the assault weapon ban nationally. From 1994 to 2004, during that same period of time, they also banned high-capacity magazines. They banned those things for 10 full years. During that period of time, we had some of the most deadly mass shooting events in the history of the United States. During that period of time, the DOJ was tracking data, as they had for decades before and the decades after. The data that the Department of Justice showed that there was zero change on violent crime when we had these assault weapon bans and high-capacity magazine bans, two of the things that 3D printers and ghost guns are typically used to create. People can create high-capacity magazines and create assault weapons using these ghost gun kits. I understand that people my age, the millennials, say literally way too often, and I understand that I used air quotes too often. However, he did literally use all the arguments that the anti-gunners use, and these air quotes are because I disagree with the terms and their existence, but when discussing them in the context, I do use those terms regardless of whether or not I agree with their definitions or meanings. If you guys enjoyed this video, if you enjoy what I'm doing here, I just want to say thank you to everyone that supports. If you can drop a like, that would be much appreciated. You guys know the drill. Have fun, be safe, stay dangerous. Peace.